Hi everyone, so on today's video I'm going to have a conversation with Bhavya Kumar. Bhavya is the Managing Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group, Dubai. So he's someone who has been able to make an excellent career transitioning from India. He studied in India first, then he went to Chicago Booth, which is one of the top 5 MBA programs in the world. And then eventually he transitioned into management consulting. So we are going to have an in-depth conversation about building a very solid career, be it in terms of job or entrepreneurship. We are going to speak about how to manage that career, because these days there is so much talk about work-life balance and vagera things. And finally, we are going to get into the nitty-gritties of how he manages his money and what would be his tips and strategies to youngsters in terms of managing their money. So over to the main conversation, and I hope that you like this conversation and let me know which next guest I should invite. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Millionaire Blueprint podcast. On this podcast, we are going to discuss specific strategies, insights on wealth building by bringing in people who have done exceptionally well in their career. And I'm extremely thankful for Bhav for taking out the time. Bhav is Managing Director and Partner at BCG in Dubai. And today we are going to discuss 3 things. Number 1, we are going to speak about how to build a very solid career and build wealth. Number 2, how to manage that career and wealth. And third and finally, because Bhavya has access to a lot of data around macro trends, he has been working all across the globe. So he will share insights on these macro trends. Extremely important video. Please watch it till the very end. He will share specific insights and frameworks.
Thanks, Akshat, for having me. I'm glad to be here and to share my perspective. So from introduction, my name is Bhavya Kumar. I'm Managing Director and Partner with BCG in Dubai. I lead our digital and banking business in the region, have been part of Middle East office for the past 10 years, but has a lot of global experience as well, including US and other markets. So happy to share my perspective.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First and foremost, let us quickly understand how we can build wealth through jobs. This is especially important because a lot of high income jobs are going away. You are working at BCG Dubai, the salary must be really nice. And a lot of people have built wealth in the past by getting these high powered jobs. But the number of high powered jobs are going down. So A, what is your take on that? And what advice would you have for people who are just entering the workforce as to how to get these high-powered jobs?
Good question, Akshat, right? So I think on the first point, that high-income jobs, I slightly disagree here that I don't think they're entirely going away. I think they are there, but the nature of the jobs are changing. Yeah. So for example, when I went to business school 15 years ago, investment banking, consulting, these were the 2 most attractive jobs from a compensation perspective. But if you look at now, the scenario has changed. A lot of tech jobs have come up. A lot of AI jobs have come up. We recently saw average salary for an AI engineer in OpenAI companies is 800,000 US. So you see there are jobs, but the type of jobs are different now. The skill set they demand are quite different. And that links to your second question, that if I am a new entrant entering the market right now, I need to look at what are the futuristic jobs that are going to give exceptional returns over the long term. And one of them is, AI I talk a lot about. There are technology jobs, there are jobs in startups, etc., that I still think are very promising. So anyone entering the career should look at 2 things. 1, are my skills aligned with these futuristic trends? Number 2, they should also think about, I should be, not only focused on just doing my current job. What can I do beyond my current job as well? Which is a theme that we talk a lot about, which is also thinking about alternative income streams. That you should always have, you never put all your eggs in one basket. That's the theory, but you want to diversify yourself from a career perspective as well, so that no matter what happens to your current industry, current job, it might get disrupted. You always have a second or a third leg, and that can help you build portfolio. So that would be my quick insight on that one.
Right. So just delving deeper, if we speak about the startup job trend in India, for example, they were paying exceptionally well before the funding winter hit post 2021. In my understanding, I do see a big part of AI being a fad. It might go away. What's your take on AI, and what's your take that, and to what extent do you think that this is actually just a trend which might not sustain for a very long period of time? If you can give some commentary there.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I think AI is a fundamental disruption that's happening in the economy overall. And it is similar a little bit to the internet, which happened 30 years ago. Yeah. If you think about what internet did to all of us, it's basically gave all the information access to everyone across the globe. Yeah. Now, what AI is trying to do, because on internet, you have a lot of information available. A lot of them is very unstructured. So people struggle to find what is the right information and what is not. What AI, for example, Gen AI right now can do it can actually scan all this information that's out there and create summary reports from you that are very insightful and can be actionable. Yeah, that's just one example of how AI, I think, is taking the whole internet trend to the next level. Second aspect is also it's automating a lot of the things that were previously done manually across various sectors. We talk about, I come from finance, you talk about finance. A lot of investing is also happening through AI algorithms now. So if you talk about, my wife is a doctor, if you talk about healthcare, there's a lot of robotic surgeries that are happening using healthcare. So I believe AI is a fundamental trend that's not going away. So people who are looking to, upskill themselves, faster their careers, I think should definitely, upskill themselves into AI, no matter what domain it is, because that trend is going to impact all the industries.
So just going down deeper into this, right? So for example, if we speak about the internet, the 2000.com crash was one of the pivot points, right? Because it separated like weak internet-based professions, weak internet-based companies from the strong ones. Something similar might happen in the AI space. Right now, it's very broad. People might not know the commercial applications of it, how companies are going to make money. If someone is trying to build a startup in that, they might not understand it. If someone is looking to find a job in these high-powered industries, they might not understand what type of job should I pick or skill should I build. So any insights there, anything that you would like to add?
Absolutely. So it's a good question. So one thing you need to understand is what are the use cases that are easily applicable from such a new technology.
Yeah.
So, of course, as you mentioned, 2000.com bust, a lot of the companies were running on hype. And as soon as the crisis happened, you could see that only the companies that had strong business models survived. Yeah. And the same thing will happen, with AI as well. Now, one application, for example, I was talking to an entrepreneur a few days ago who has created a chat GPT type of solution for animation. So what you can do is you can just, literally write your script, in 5-10 lines. And this whole tool will generate an automatic movie with all the content, with all the creations, with all the voiceover, with animation. So you can have in 10 minutes a beautiful music video for yourself from your story, right? So if you think about such applications, they could be very disruptive because a lot of guys like yourself who do content creation can actually benefit a lot from this. It can also be sold to B2B type of businesses. For example, many studios, take months to create such an animation, which can now be created in minutes. Right. So such use cases, you need to think about what are immediate use cases that can be applied and you can earn a lot of money through them. And you need to align to those type of companies. Yeah?
Right. So another, talking about one more example here, right? So if I put in the question that who would be considered as the father of the internet, like you would type some name, let us know in the comment box. Question number 2 here is that who became rich from internet? Then it would be people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, people of that nature. So on that note, right, what I'm trying to separate is that innovation is there, right, in terms of AI or any new technology. But who gets rich from that? What according to you separates that? Because that is what our audience might be interested in. It's this innovation is happening, AI, vagera, right, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So what is it that I should be looking at now if I want to become like next Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, so look, you need to first look at the macro trends that you believe can shape the future of the world in the next 10, 20, 30 years, right? So, for example, if I talk about Bezos, when he started Amazon, no one believed in him. He was trying to sell books online, but everyone said, it does not make sense. And by the way, he was a very successful hedge fund manager when he started that job, when he started his company. Of course, then the bust happened, the company still survived, and the rest is history, right? We saw what happened. So you need to align yourself to a trend that you believe in are going to stand for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Second key aspect is find the right team. If you're trying to build a business, you make sure you have the right people who you work with, who share the same vision and who have a potential to actually disrupt the market. Because if it's more of an incremental innovation, more likelihood it may either be bought by someone or it will not survive. Right. But if you believe in a trend that's going to be disruptive, that's going to create value across multiple sectors, I think that's where you should align yourself and try to find a team that is pursuing that. Okay. The last one I would say is I see a lot of people now, especially the young generation, they are very impatient. So everybody wants to become rich very quickly. Yeah. I don't think that's the right way to think about it. You need to invest yourself for the long term in certain trends, give them time. And again, analogy is if someone was in Amazon back in 1990s and it was impatient 2, 3, 4 years, nothing happened. Right. The real wealth was created 10, 20 years down the line. So you need to stick to what you believe in. Of course, if you think it's going in the right direction. Yeah.
Got it. So now contextualizing it to the job, let me ask a very pertinent question here, because many people would build startups, they will get rich from it. And many people would equally get, or not equally, but at least to some extent, they will get rich by working in these industries. So if you are 17 years old, 18 years old, getting into a college, what are like 3 specific skills that you would pick in order to get a high-powered job and stick to that industry?
Yeah, so look, I am a fundamental believer in you need to have strong analytical and problem-solving skills. Yeah?
Okay.
So that cuts across no matter what you do, right? So you want to make sure that you develop those strong quant analytical skills upfront. That's super important.
Like what? Like exactly what?
So, for example, problem solving, right? So, if you have, if you say you are given a problem that this company needs to increase its sales, so you need to be able to understand how does the sales come from, what is the revenue, what is the price, how do I dissect it? So, basic quantitative, frame of mind you need to have, and you should be able to structure things effectively so that you can digest the complexity into simple terms. Right?
So, do you think colleges teach this?
I don't think colleges teach that. And
how do you pick this?
It's basically, you can actually, people like yourself do a lot of, a good job on the internet to actually teach people these frameworks and basic concepts. Mm-hmm. And these are very easy, but you need to really learn them and also practice them day in and day out. Right. And then it becomes part of your life. So as a consultant, you've also been a consultant, we practice these frameworks day in and day out solving problems, and it helps us in our daily life as well. So we can simplify complex problems into small things.
So I will just quickly add there, right? So for example, one thing that has really helped me, right? Because many of them would not want to become consultants, get training the way consultants typically get. One key thing is that you could try to figure out improvements, right? For example, if you are ordering something from Zomato, right? Your order took maybe 20-30 minutes more, right? Then what was the process like? How could it be made faster? Similarly, if you're going to a local kirana store, right? You're saying that, this guy is not accepting like UPI payment or a bunch of other different things. So figure out business improvements that you could bring. So that's what Bhavya was saying in a way. So that can help you be more structured.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the second point is, for me, it's all about communication. Yeah. I mean, more I think about what, separates successful people from less successful is how well you can communicate. You may have the best idea in the world in your head, but if you cannot communicate that to the right audience at the right level, then it will not work. So you need to work upfront on your communication skills. And this is not about, speaking one language good. It's more about being coherent no matter what language you speak in. So making sure that it can stick to the audience and you tailor it to the right things. And the third is all about what domain you align yourself onto, because that's also very important. So, for example, when we were studying back in the day, I did my engineering in computer science. And I think that was a great decision back then, because, then at that time, computer science was kicking off. It was a new thing to do. And a lot of great things happened, right? Going forward from now, what you do may be very different. One example is space is a great domain now. Yeah. You would see a lot of innovation happening in space domain. Space tourism is getting pretty big. So if I were a youngster now, I would not think about I just need to do computer science engineering. No, there are many other things you could do which you can actually accelerate your career going forward. Yeah.
Right. So now this gives me good information, right? If I'm a youngster listening to this chat so far, one key concern that I would have is that, in the last X number of years, the number of high-powered jobs, at least in India, they are not increasing, if not decreasing, so to say, or not increasing at the rate at which the demand for these jobs is going up. Be it like the top-end government jobs, the number of seats have gone down. If you look at the investment banking industry after 2008, it has gotten crushed. Some of the biggest VCs, for example, Sequoia Capital, a couple of other big names have exited the Indian market. So if I'm a college student looking to get these high-powered jobs, okay, AI is one industry I can look at. What other areas or specific jobs you would ask youngsters to look at more candidly?
Yeah, so look, I come from consulting. I would always speak about it. So I think consulting still is a very attractive career from my perspective.
Jobs are there?
Jobs are still there. Because a good thing about consulting is a bit recession-proof. Yeah, because when the economy is going down, still companies need advice how to better structure themselves. So we are, still consulting as an industry is still growing quite rapidly. So I would encourage people who really want to get into this type of domain where they like solving problems for clients, for different businesses. This could be a great career path, right? So AI, we already talked about. I think there are other spaces within the technology domain itself where disruption is going to happen. For example, medical technology is a great domain to get into now. A lot of innovation is happening, how you actually manage your day-to-day health and lifestyle, and that innovation is only going to increase. So that's another field you could think yourself taking into. Finance, I still believe, is a great career. Now, the type of job you will do as a finance industry will be different. Guys like yourself, you made a great career in talking about finance, teaching people finance, because it's an innate skill that people need to develop, and there is a lot of demand for people who can teach these skills as well. So I would say these are some of the core areas I would see from where people can actually think about specializing in as they're starting their college journey. Yeah.
Right. So do you think that industries are becoming winners take all type of a market, especially like when it comes to consulting or tech?
I think that trend, I believe that's happening. For example, especially in tech, you talk about these big three companies, Amazon, Google, Apple. You see them dominating across. I was in US a few months ago. I mean, you go to any grocery chain, for example, Whole Foods, they're also bought by Amazon. So Amazon is not only an online player, they are into physical. They own, largest data centers in the world. So they are in tech, they are in e-commerce, they are, retailers, this is everywhere, right? And that's the same thing Google is trying to do. So I think the trend is going in that direction. It's pretty much winners become all. But what I would say is there is still space for micro entrepreneurs. They can still survive. The good thing is they can either be bought out by these large players, which is still fine, or they can still continue. There's enough space in the market to go on. In consulting also, you see a similar trend playing out. The large companies are actually consolidating market share. And I think that is going to continue. I'm not saying there will not be small companies, but they will have a space. But it's pretty much becoming a winner-takes-all market.
Right. So now contextualizing this conversation for our audiences who might be watching this from India, American market is very different because it's mostly organized, regulations, bunch of other different things. Indian market is mostly unorganized. So how do you see the difference, and how would this play out in terms of the type of jobs that are being created in the Indian economy?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So Indian market, as you rightly said, is very disorganized. And a lot of sectors are still getting formalized, which means a lot of opportunity. For entrepreneurs, they can pick any sector in India. You would find opportunity to innovate very easily. Versus in US, a lot of that has happened 100 years ago. So you would not see obvious opportunities to automate things that are there in India right now. So what I would, if someone is in India right now looking for building a career, there are two ways, right? You can, of course, start a job at a normal enterprise or a startup, or you can start your own thing. I think both are good. But if I were a youngster right now, I would rather actually take a path of starting my own thing, because I believe the opportunity is so big in this market, and it is across the sectors. That's the other thing, right? You can pick a small Karyana store, right? There are so many Karyana stores that struggle with supply chain day in and day out. You can actually do a software which can help automate their supply chain and help them deliver faster, right? Do the last mile delivery. That's one example you can do. There are many other examples that are happening, which will happen in India as well. So I would say entrepreneurship is probably a good idea right now in India. The stable jobs will always be there, but they are more steady. They are tough to get by. I agree with you. You really need to get to the right colleges. And even if you get the right colleges, you have to be in the right set of people to get selected in those jobs. So you should consider what your options are, but I would strongly consider entrepreneurship at this point in time in India.
So I would play the devil's advocate here, right? That I would think that people should not become entrepreneurs in India right away, right? Multiple reasons why I say it, right? So number one would be that it's really tough to build a business in India in majority of the industries. Barring a handful of industries, most of them are not profitable, right? One key example would be D2C industries, right? I mean, unless you have massive funding, right? And if you can go through that hustle, it's fine. The point I'm trying to make is that maybe it's a good idea to first do a job, build some skill set. That allowed me, right? I mean, thanks to consulting firms who trained me really well, I could think in structures. I improved my communication skills. I was getting paid for getting this training. So those are advantages versus starting your business directly or trying to start your business directly. Many people do not, or most of them in India would not come from like a business background. So again, throwing that question back at you, if you were 17 or like maybe 20, just graduating from college, how would you think about entrepreneurship versus job?
Yeah, I think it also depends on, I think you mentioned a point on the context where you're coming from. A lot of people who have no idea about how to build a business or have never seen something like that happen in their family, etc., it is a tough ask. But there's so many people who come from, I mean, I'm not talking about big industries, but even if your family runs a small shop, it's actually a business. So, and when I talk about business, you can start a small SME, small medium type of business, which is a mom and pop store. Could be you can run a small A&B type of business, etc. So these businesses are actually not so complicated to run. You can easily run or learn those skills on the go as well, and you can actually do that. But of course, if you have no idea about business in general, if you don't come from that background, and also if you're not coming from a great school, for example, then I would agree with you. You rather find a job somewhere where you build the basic skill sets that are required to run any business. So that's how I would see it. It depends upon where are you coming from, what your perspective is, and what type of training have you got in your education.
So just one quick question. So what are the best skills that you could pick at a job or individually on your own if your eventual goal is to become an entrepreneur?
So look, I think we spoke about this a little bit. So you need to understand, first of all, is understanding the economic structure, how the economy operates, right? That's very important. No matter what business you do, you need to be aware of what type of macro trends there are, what is the headwinds for this industry in particular, how can we, overcome them. That's number one. Second, basic problem solving and structuring is important, so that you need to know what problem you're trying to solve. Because if you don't understand that, you cannot create a solution for that. Number three, how will you sell this product or service to a customer? It has to be through innovation, plus also through communication. Because no matter what good product you have, you want to make sure your customer understands what you're trying to sell them. And last but not the least, you should have good finance skills. Because you need to know the basics of finance to manage your business. Whether it's the liquidity management, what is my cash flow, where is it coming from? So these basics you need to build, and you can learn this, through a job. I would encourage anyone who wants to become an entrepreneur to make sure you get these skills lined up during your job career, so that when you become an entrepreneur, you have access to all these skills.
All right. So on that note, let us quickly speak about like some simple things that youngsters can do, and let's try to brainstorm together on what a roadmap of good wealth building would be for someone who is like in their 20s, 30s. So basically you can build wealth by doing 2 or 3 things. One is running a business, becoming an entrepreneur. That's one path that people get really fascinated about. Second is a job, that you get a high powered job. Third is through investments. In many cases, it's a combination of all 3, right? So which people do not really necessarily talk about. So on that note, right, you spoke about analytical skills, structured thinking, communication skills, but these are things that I've been hearing from the time I was like maybe 12 years old, right? That you have to learn like problem solving, this, that. Specifically, right? I mean, I just need like a hitting target. This if I do, right? For example, we are always given a target that if you score 95% marks in 10th, 12th, XYZ, so आपका career set है, right? So in order to do your career set वाली चीज, right? What are like simple things that someone should do or have very clear targets towards?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, there is not a magic bullet here, right? Because the world is changing so rapidly. I think one thing I would add to that skill set is that you really need to be focused on what you are doing. A lot of the youngsters, especially in the 20s, are not really focused on what they want to achieve. So if you don't have an idea of what you want to build, then it's very difficult to actually go on that path. So I would say the first step is actually to think about what is it that I'm going to do in my life, right? Not in long term, but also in the short to medium term. In 5 to 10 years, where do I want to head to? So we do a lot of career planning with a lot of our incoming people for our company, and it's very important because it helps them guide their thinking into one direction, and then you can focus and plan your career. So that's step number 1. Second is, to me, very important is also knowing the right people who have done this previously, because so that you are not making the same mistakes that these people have done in the past, and you can actually fast track your career quite a bit. The third thing I would say is also making sure you stick into that domain long enough. Don't become impatient very quickly and say, no, things are not working out, let me switch. A lot of people try to switch a lot of jobs very quickly, which I don't think is the right idea to do. If you are in the right industry, give it some time, and make sure that you have, because there are cycles all the time. You want to make sure that when the cycle is right, you are at the right job. And that may take 4, 5, 6 years, which is fine. So if you combine all of these skills, you would create a package so that you can be successful. There is no one single silver bullet here that you can do that and become successful.
So one clear target that I see these days is that India's population is going to age in like 2065. So there's a lot of competition amongst youngsters for high-powered jobs. But when it comes to countries like Japan, or when it comes to like Western countries, even US, Canada, all are aging, but they still need to pump their economy, so to say, maintain their economy. So do you see this global mobility a key trend? Indian youngsters will go to Japan and start working there, build wealth. Maybe they'll contribute to Indian economy also in that respect. But do you see this like as a pivotal change that will happen in the next 20 years?
Yeah, look, that I think it has already started. So if you think about Indian community that's working abroad, it's pretty sizable already, right? And I think it's going to grow even further. And the reason are, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, there is less skilled workforce, even young workforce in a lot of these countries. That obviously need more manpower, and India is in the right position to supply all of that. What I wish to see from India is that we're supplying more high-end labor rather than low-skilled labor, which is happening a lot. For example, where I come from, Middle East, there's a lot of low-skilled labor that goes there and work, which is okay. But I think going forward, it's beneficial for India if we upskill our labor, and then they can actually do more high-end jobs and do more design type of work in these economies. So I think this trend is going to grow further. And it's a great way to build wealth. Coming back to your point that, working abroad initially, at least in the initial years of your career, is actually a fantastic way to, build up basic wealth. And then, of course, you need to grow it, multiply it using investing. But if you do the same job in India, you probably will not make that much money. Plus, in some jurisdictions like UAE, where I come from, there is no income tax. It's even more advantageous to build your career there. And then later down the line, once you grow in your career 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you can always come back to India, because at that level, your salaries sometimes normalize as well. But initially, it's a great way to build your career and also your wealth if you start working abroad.
Right. So just simplifying that, right? So what Bhavya is saying is that, see, he works in the Middle East, right? And the tax is zero, I suppose, right? Similarly, many countries offer good tax incentives, so to say, right? I was speaking with him yesterday. He was telling me that in the US, it's 40% tax.
Yeah,
right?
depending on which city you are in. Yeah.
So it's fairly high, right? Even higher than in India. To cut the long story short, right? I mean, if you go to a market where competition is less, that's one clear win. Number two, if you work abroad, that allows you to save more. We can have like PPP conversation and purchasing power parity, etc. But at the end of the day, you will build wealth based on the savings that you're creating. That's point number two. Point number three is that go to a tax efficient country. I think that's a point that people miss. They just look at the CTC, uske baad baat nahi hoti, right? And so therefore it becomes critical that you understand this tax implication wala viewpoint. So how do you see this trend playing out in terms of rich shopping for taxes, right? Because these days, Kevin O'Leary has got an Emirati citizenship. HNIs in India are leaving for tax efficiency perspective. So do you see this trend accelerating over the next few years?
Yes, I see it accelerating, right? I mean, post-COVID, has been a lot of wealth creation across, the globe, right? And then, of course, if you tax someone at 30, 40, 50%, even in some countries, people don't want to give away their wealth like that. So that's why a lot of countries are now attracting such people, and India is no exception. If you talk about India, I personally I'm not a big fan of the tax structure in this country, because here it's very complicated, and there are so many loopholes, etc. People try to manipulate things. So for a person, who's an HNI, who really wants to, preserve wealth, grow it, it's obviously not efficient to stay here. So that's why you see the trend, people going out. But in the other countries as well, you see the similar trend. So, for example, the famous example is, the founder of Facebook, he left US and came to Singapore. As soon as the IPO happened, it's because he wanted to save taxes. So this, I think, is an important thing for youngsters also to keep in mind. As you're trying to grow your wealth, build your portfolio, think the tax implications, because they can be pretty significant.
So on that note, let me switch gears and ask a slightly different question. That what are some really simple things that someone could do right now, sitting in 2024 almost, to accelerate their career, right? I mean, one example that I would like to add is that, don't scroll through your phone a lot, right? Or just stop using your phone as much as possible. That's a very simple thing. So what are some simple tips, right? I mean, we were speaking at the other end of the spectrum, the skill manalo and all that stuff. Yes. But simple things have powerful effects.
Yeah. No, I think the first thing links to your point is distraction is too much these days. You get easily distracted with so many things, and that limits your ability to focus and grow your career in one thing. That's, I think, the biggest impediment that I see in youngsters these days, that they are just trying to rush into so many different things at the same time. I think it's better to really try to limit things and then focus on one direction, right? I think the second aspect that I see is also consider a lot of people really focus on building career wealth very fast. You need to take it's a long-term game. You want to also prioritize things in the right way, so that you can build a sustainable career. Because it's not a sprint, but it's rather a marathon, and you need to make sure you prioritize your health, your family, etc. In addition to building your career, right? So I think these are some of the practical tips you can think from day one. Because when I was young, I was just focusing on building my career. I had to, I pretty much kept the rest.
Did you ever focus on health when you were in 20s?
Not at all. I wish I would have, right? So, because by that time, it was like a brainwash situation for me, that you just focus on building your career. Everything else was a second priority.
Right, absolutely. And did you focus on work-life balance? I mean,
Not at all. No, that's what I'm saying. And now I can tell people that what you should not do, right? So this is something you should never do. You should from get-go think about work-life balance, get-go think about how do I make a sustainable career, and it's not a sprint, right? It's a marathon.
So on that note, let us speak about part 2, which is around building wealth and managing wealth, right? So this is a part that we discussed. Now let us get into the specifics of how personally Bhav thinks about investing and what is his perspective on it. So over to you, Bhav. So if you can explain a little bit about your philosophy of wealth building, right? And how you have gone about creating wealth. We understood, right, that it's mostly through job as of now, and we have created a substantial corpus. And on that note, right, I mean, how you're thinking about managing your wealth for the next phase of your career?
Yes. So I think the first step is how do you build wealth, which we spoke about. In terms of how do you maintain and sustain and grow your wealth, there are various models how you do it, right? Some people, of course, if they are not inclined towards managing it yourself, you can obviously partner with someone who is well qualified to manage it for you. Or some people take the other way, where you say, okay, look, I know what is the view of the market. I can take a position. I can invest accordingly, right? For me personally, the key themes that I apply in managing my wealth is, one is diversification, which I'm a big fan of, that you want to make sure that your nest is diversified enough that no matter what happens in the economy, in one particular sector, you are diversified. And when I talk about diversification, it's not only about the asset classes, which is, stocks, bonds, etc., but also geographically. You need to make sure you have exposure to, 2, 3 at least different markets so that you have natural hedges built into the portfolio. So that's number one. Second is taking a long-term view. Again, you want to make sure that you invest in for a long term and are not carried away by short-term volatility that happens so frequently in the markets. Third thing is, I want to also make sure that the portfolio is enough liquid so that in case any emergency situation happens, that I have a corpus to draw down upon, right? So that's the last thing. And I think the fourth thing I would say is, if you are a beginner, if you have no idea about the markets and you don't want to learn it, just focus on index investing. It's the best thing that is out there for anybody, because it's super diversified. If you like Indian economy, for example, if you believe it will grow, just put your money in the index fund here and that's it, right? Don't make it complicated. The more complicated you make investing, the lower the chances of successful you are, right? So I would say simplification, diversification, taking a long-term duration. Probably these are the key philosophies that I have for investing.
So how, according to you, has investing changed in the last 20 years?
Yeah, I think if you look at 20 years before, I think there was no exposure to these multiple different asset classes that exist right now and how easy it is to access these investments. So for example, now, we spoke yesterday about REITs, which is, how can you own fractional, shares in some real estate portfolios. Now, if you don't have big money, you can actually buy, some of these things that are available to you as a retail investor as well. These things 20 years ago were not available, or these instruments were not there.
But do you think that that's a fancy version of derivatives, so to say, right? Which collapsed the 2008?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit different, right? So I think derivatives, I would say, it's more speculative. This is more about breaking down large chunk of investments into smaller chunks so that retail investors can actually buy into them.
But that can lead to speculation, right?
It can, it can. So you have to obviously do the due diligence, you're right, but more instruments are available right now for you to take exposure. For example, gold is another thing, right? You don't need to physically buy gold, you can do exposure through gold ETFs, for example, if you're bullish on that thing. So that is one trend. I think second is, there are a lot of good automated AI-driven investment algorithms that are there. We talk a lot about robo-advisory these days. A lot of my clients also use them. So it's
But do you think it works?
It works. It works. I mean, again, if you know what you want to get out of it, it works, right? Okay. So there are 2, 3 models that they have. If you want to preserve your wealth, it can create an asset allocation model for you, which can work simply, right? So again, for people who really don't have much knowledge about these things, these are some good solutions they can look into. And the last thing I would say is, there's a lot of change because of internet and people like yourself, that people can now upskill themselves, which was not available 20 years ago. So I need to run to a broker to buy a share, which is not the case anymore. I can do it online, and then I can learn from people like yourself to be more knowledgeable about these things. So that was not there 20 years ago.
Got it. So on that note, what is something that you would not do with your money right now? And I will also answer this question after you.
So look, for me, by the way, I think Indian markets are quite highly valued right now. So I would not put money right now in Indian markets. But what I would not do also is, I'm not a big fan of gold, for example. Okay. I don't think that's a good asset class for me, so I would not put there. So right now, what actually I think it's a great investment, at least for the short term, is actually investing in US dollar. Okay. You're getting 5-6% risk free on dollars. So at least in the 1 to 2 years, it's a great investment to have, because dollar for me is a safe currency, especially in a highly volatile world. And if you get risk-free 5-6%, it's a no-brainer. So things like that are very attractive to me right now.
So just contextualizing it, and then I'll give my answer to this question. So there are like real assets, right? In the sense that you can buy limited supply things like real estate, you can buy gold, physical gold, not the bonds version of it. Do you see value in these limited supply assets?
I think real estate for sure. Yeah, I think that's something which I am a big believer on now, that as an asset class, it will do really well. Especially, of course, you need to see where are you buying the real estate, what is the opportunity, etc. But overall, I'm pretty bullish in that asset class. And of course, from a diversification perspective as well, this helps quite a bit. So gold, not so much, because I think it's a very different dynamic that plays out in gold, how it is controlled supply demand perspective. So I would still keep a less exposure towards gold, but more on the real estate side. Yeah.
Right. So just very quickly answering the question that I had asked Bhavya, that number one, I would not buy in a market that is going up or buy very less of it. Majority of my buys have been bulk buy in a falling market. So that's one I completely agree with Bhavya. Number two, I'll have exposure to fixed supply assets. This is something that I've realized. I think that this is a trend that will pick up going forward. This would not comprise of sovereign gold bonds. Why? I'll probably write a separate post on this. Number three, I would ensure that I have asset class diversification, which is critical. People keep on speaking about the fact that if stocks mein invest kar do, ya real estate mein kar do, XYZ mein. It's critical to diversify. One thing that I've learned from Bhavya is that you also need to diversify across geographies. Now, this is something that I will look slightly more closely into. So just delving deeper into that point, geographical diversification. Why do you say that, right? Where do you see the next crisis coming from, and why geographical diversification is important?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the global economy now, it's kind of, there's a very de-averaged picture in terms of growth that's happening. If you look at the more Western markets, US, Western Europe, they are slowing down considerably. Yeah, if you look at India, for example, it's still the healthy growth rate that's projected. China is slowing down. Middle East is actually growing quite fast. Pockets of Africa are going quite fast, right? So it's a very different picture if you look at different parts of the world, and that's why I say it's important to have a geographical diversification as well. So for example, the investments in Middle East are doing really well right now as well, yeah, and it's obviously linked a lot to the oil price. But if you are bullish on the oil price, that's a good geography to take exposure towards. If you're bullish on high-tech innovation, of course the tech sector in US is still a good bet from my perspective. Yeah. India overall as an economy is doing quite well, so overall I think I'm pretty bullish here. So, but it's in China, I would not invest money right now. No way. I think there is a major crisis brewing there. Be it their real estate, be it their even their lending books. If you look at the banks, not healthy at all. So China is actually in a pretty bad shape from a investing perspective. So hence I would say if you are an investor, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Asset classes is clear, but then if you also diversify it beyond countries, so then you say, okay, if there is a crisis, somewhere oil prices goes up, Middle East will do well. So that's a natural hedge in terms of if you want to hedge against a crisis situation. Yeah. So you need to think strategically, where do you place your portfolio in what geographies as well, and that can give you a nice diversification beyond the asset class.
So one interesting conversation we were having yesterday was regarding the Dubai real estate market, right? And so what's your view on that?
Yeah, so I think Dubai real estate has done really well over the last 4 or 5 years, especially after the COVID times and especially after the Russian-Ukraine war. But there are various different reasons why it happened. For example, a lot of the wealthy Russians and Ukrainians, they came into Dubai, flooded the market with money. But now, as you see, I think the market is peaking, and I would not expect it to grow from here. So I would be cautious in investing money in the real estate in Dubai right now. Overall, the market needs a lot of triggers to actually sustain that kind of momentum, which I don't personally see in the next 6 to 12 months. So I would stay away from the market right now, but it has done handsomely well for a lot of investors over the past few years. Yeah.
Right. On that note, right, I mean, something critical that I picked from what you were saying was that when it comes to China and the US, the growth is slowing down. So do you think that world can grow, and more specifically India can grow without US and China growing?
It's a good question. So I think India has to build two legs to its growth, right? So one is the domestic consumption story, which I still believe is quite strong. The second is export-led story, which is, I don't think it's a great one, to be honest, right? And that's where we need to be very focused on. If India has to grow double digits, so right now we say 6-7%, to me that's not good at all. Yeah? From my perspective, India should be looking at growing double digits, what China did 20-30 years ago for a long period. and then we can become a developed nation pretty quickly. But in order to do that, we need to focus on our exports, because domestic consumption will grow, which I'm bullish on, which will continue. In terms of the export sector, we need to think about what, like IT exports we did in a very good way. But now we need to think about what are the other sectors that we can, and it could be more services-oriented industry. For example, we can export, high-end legal lawyers advisory. That is happening quite a bit now. A lot of the top law firms in New York are setting up offices in India because that thing can be automated, and a lot of Indian lawyers are actually certified to serve and give advice. Management consulting is a good example. We can have a lot of good consulting expertise here that can serve outside markets. So we need to think about what can we export, which are more high value add services, and it can help us grow faster. So I think India can still grow at a pretty decent pace, even though there is a slowdown in US and China. China, we are not so linked to in any case. US, my view is it will not slow down terribly. It will still grow 1 to 3%, which is good enough for India to actually grow at a double-digit rate. Yeah.
From that perspective, because majority of the audiences who are watching this podcast might be investing exclusively in India. So if you have to suggest them the next market to look at, what would that market be and why?
Beyond India?
Beyond India. Yeah.
So I would say look at the Middle East market. Yeah. Because it's two reasons. One, it is very close to India. Yeah, so it's very easy to, a lot of people go to Dubai, for vacation, etc.
But in which area would they be investing, in the sense that stocks, I don't think that is allowed.
It is allowed. Yes. And now it is opened up, right? Okay. So I think it is possible to actually take exposure to even stock markets in these countries. So, which I think is a good hedge for people sitting in India. And then you should just go there and explore and see the market for yourself. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying, go all into that market, but take some exposure there, from a diversification perspective. So that market you should look at. The second one, which I'm always a big fan of, is the tech sector in US. Yeah. You should always look at this. Still a lot of the major innovation that is happening in the tech sector that will change the trends globally is happening in US and Silicon Valley. I know India is growing fast, it's happening, but still we are much far behind the ecosystem that's there in US. So you should definitely look at the tech sector in US, plus look at Middle East from a diversification perspective. I think that's, to me, two solid markets to look after. Yeah.
Right. So the final leg that we are going to quickly wrap up on would be raising our kids, right? So Bhavya has 2 young kids, I have 2 young kids. What skills or what top 3 skills you would want them to pick up? And why? Right. So then I'll try to answer that same question.
So for me, one, so my son actually he's a space enthusiast, which is not by design, but he loves it, right? So and he talks about, for him, he has figured his passion that is what he wants to do. And I was really glad when he said that to me, and that's all what he does. That's his focus. That's what he talks about. He goes to different schools about learning about the same thing. So I like that aspect of him, that he's his focus from get-go. Second thing I'm teaching him is to get into some professional sports as well. Because I think that teaches you a lot of the skills that are relevant for when you come into working life. How you work in teams, how do you actually gel together, focus on a goal, etc. So all of those skills you can learn through competitive sports. So that's the other thing that I'm teaching my kids. And the last thing also I'm teaching them is actually meditation. Okay. Because a lot of the kids, as I was mentioning, right, their attention span is not there. Yeah, it's very limited now. So what I tell them is how to take a step back, even if it's 30 minutes every day, take a time to, chill down, and then again, shut down your brain so that can help you better manage yourself. Yeah.
So I think that's a wonderful answer. On that note, I will just give my answer, and then, I'll ask Bhavya if he has any more comments to add. So in my case, I would probably ask my kids, or coach my kids more around language, speaking language. That's very critical. Entrepreneurial skills, starting something with them is again very important. They will feel involved. Third is that finding that mental peace and being less distracted. So food only dena, right? So that is one thing. I don't know whether I'll be able to do that or not, but that's a concentration that will definitely go on. So on that note, anything else that you would want to add?
No, I think this is pretty good, right? Maybe the last thing I just want to say to the audience is, right, there's a lot of gloom and doom scenarios that are being painted overall, and people get very easily discouraged because of this. I fundamentally believe, these scenarios will always be there, but there will always be a lot of pocket for growth in different areas in the economy, no matter what the situation is. You need to be proactive enough to find the right areas to focus on, and then be persistent. And the success will come. It's not about how quickly you get there. You will get there, but it's more about the journey that you take and make sure it's sustainable. So that's the last thing.
All right, wonderful. I hope that you found this chat to be insightful. If you did, do drop in your comments and do like and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully, we'll continue to bring more guests who have done exceptionally well in their careers and would continue to share these insights with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next.